I think about the key point in driving all of that is collaboration. I don't think that there's enough collaboration that happens in any setting. And when I have humility, vulnerability, empathy, trust, those all signal to me an environment where I want to collaborate. And I think about our kids, no matter the setting. I think about our adults. I think about our team meetings. I think about our boardroom meetings, our conference meetings. When we have those, we drive change like no other. How has collaboration with your staff and your people elevated their voice? And what would you like to see more of when you go into the classrooms, when you hear your kids speak? What is it about collaboration that changes us as individuals?
So from a student standpoint, when they actually get to collaborate, they become owners of their learning, right? They're not just sitting back and being taught by the sage. They now are collaborating with their colleagues. So with that ownership comes, I have to know what I'm talking about. I've done the research, and I have to take a side and have an opinion on what's happened. As a principal for almost 20 years, I will often say to staff, don't bring me just problems, have some solutions also. And I've intentionally gone with some of their suggestions and seen them fall flat on their face. But it gave them at least the impetus that he let me try this, and now we have to kind of tweak it a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of how I see that collaboration piece.
Yeah, collaboration from a student's perspective is that kind of hones in on bringing kids together through project-based learning, because there are steps that leads to that end product, and you have to engage everyone in your group through the process, whether you're doing it in a small group setting or the entire class has an end goal in mind. And so again, it's hard when students don't have the personality, or they feel they don't have the personality to be a voice when it comes to collaboration, but being able to identify students, okay, I'm a good note taker. I may not talk and be in the front, but I'm a good note taker. So how about I take notes? Okay, great. What do you think? What draws you? I'm a good artist. How about I do the logo? And so just being able to give them free space to have those conversations, because I think, again, just the history of their education journey starts in kindergarten, where you have to ask for everything. You have to ask to go to the bathroom, raise your hand, walk in a straight line, don't talk, don't breathe, don't chew gum at the same time. So with that, it's kind of hard to break that when you say, now I want you to have a voice. So you have to kind of take it back and take it in steps. And from a leadership perspective, same with leaders. If they're not used to or accustomed to a leader that gives them freedom, free thought, free voice, they may be more apt to just tell me what I need to do, and then I can move on from that. And so I've done the same as well, where I've had staff say, well, I've never been allowed to do X, Y, and Z, but I was wondering if you would. I said, make it make sense. That is my favorite line. Make it make sense. And if you can make it make sense, I'm all in.
So there's something that, and it's a concept that many don't necessarily explore all the time, but you both kind of shared. And you just really touched on it even more so when you talked about finding what you do well. Comparative advantage within collaboration. I think that is one of the best ways of helping you find your voice, is through understanding your comparative advantage. But that's discovery. That is, to your point at the very beginning, you got to be very intentional with understanding, who am I? What am I good at? How can I contribute? And oftentimes I think that goes unnoticed, or the question is never asked.
Yeah, so, in this Marvel and DC universe, it's the kid's superpower, right?
Right.
But you have to, as the teacher, ask curious questions and probe them. And then when they start to come up with some really good answers, then you go, I see what, you kind of talked about gaming. They're really good at this. So you take that, and then you can kind of transition that sometimes into curriculum. You know how when you're doing Fortnite and you have to do such and such, those are one of the best ways to get kids to learn something that they know about, to transition into something that you're trying to teach them.
Yeah, and it comes to meeting them where they are. I mentioned TikTok before, so it's not uncommon for an assignment. And if a student is more apt to make a TikTok, why aren't we accepting their TikTok as the assignment? They may be a visual learner, they may be very expressive, but when they get in front of everyone else, they kind of turn into an introvert. So it's just different strategies that you can use. But I think it's up to the educator as well to be okay with letting students lead the way. That is the hardest part because that is very uncomfortable for some educators and not the norm for others. And so I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna let my students do that. I'm not gonna let my, and so there were some things that I did that was completely out the box and against the grain when I was an educator, and they thought I was crazy. And my principal would look at me and I said, I promise it's gonna make sense. And then as we started to see the development of the students and the students taking charge, they ran my classroom. They knew what to do and how to do it, and I just kind of facilitated. But I said, I'm here as a facilitator. This is your classroom. So based on what we have to learn, how are we going to learn it? And who's going to step up to the plate and do different things? And so, but it does take intention. It doesn't happen overnight.